name is Lucia Dragos, and I'm a supervising producer at Queens Public Television. Welcome to Queens Conversations. I'm joined today by my two colleagues, John Collins and Noran Omar. And today's topic is COVID and our community, undocumented and unprotected. Our guests are Council Member Danielle Dromm, District 25, State Senator Jessica Ramos, New York Senate District 13. We have Danielle Ellman, the CEO of Common Point Queens. And we have as well Erick, who is a member of the Elmhurst community. What factors do you think contributed to making Corona, Jackson Heights and Elmhurst the epicenter of the New York epicenter?
Sure. Well, it's great to be here and to see you, Lucia, as well, and everybody else. Thank you for inviting me on. You know, my district, Jackson Heights and Elmhurst, and adding in Corona and parts of Woodside as well, have always had huge health disparities that we knew about as representatives of the community long before COVID ever hit our communities. So when COVID did hit, I knew that the impact was going to be great because it has been historic in our communities. And sure enough, you know, very early on, I went over to Elmhurst Hospital and I saw long lines of people literally dying to get in to Elmhurst Hospital. I saw a South Asian cab driver pull his wife from the car and bring her into Elmhurst Hospital across his shoulder. It was very, very moving and really, really upsetting to me to watch that happen. But, you know, going back to even sometimes when we've had snowstorms in the neighborhood. I remember in 2010 when I first got elected, people were bringing their relatives to Elmhurst Hospital on plastic bags. And that's because for the undocumented community, they don't really have access to health care. And they use Elmhurst Hospital as their primary physician. In other words, they don't have a doctor that they can go to, so they have to go to the emergency room at Elmhurst. So these disparities have existed for a long time in our communities. We're trying to right them. It's very difficult under this current administration. As you know, the federal government wants to have nothing to do with undocumented folks, never mind their health care proposals are horrible. But it's been difficult to bring services to the community outside of Elmhurst Hospital.
We're joined by Senator Ramos, and probably she missed the question, but my question was to both of you, to Councilmember Dromm and to you. What factors do you think contributed to making Corona, Jackson Heights and Elmhurst the epicenter of the New York epicenter?
Thank you so much for the question, and thank you for having me today. It's good to see my colleague and neighbor Danny doing well, and everyone else. Thank you so much. The truth is that the tragedy that took place in our community was by design. For a very long time, we've been disinvesting from our healthcare system. It's no secret to anyone in Queens that in the past 20 years, many of our hospitals have had to close because of lack of funding. Our government has not really stepped up to the plate. And in addition to that, unfortunately, then there's also the economic consequences of the pandemic. And because we have such a large undocumented population specifically, but other workers as well, many people didn't qualify for any unemployment benefits or the CARES Act or the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. They don't qualify for any state or federal help. And that means that they don't have the resources available if they haven't been able to work, or if the business they used to work for didn't reopen. They don't have the resources in order to pay rent, much less put food on the table. And that's how we've been trying to help at our office. We're now feeding almost 2,000 people every Saturday, hoping to save them a little money that they can put towards rent, because we know how worried people are this time of month for the past few months specifically. And now housing court has reopened. And so a lot of people are on edge. And it's actually estimated that in the United States, 20 million people are going to be eligible for eviction by the end of September. And that's a really staggering and outrageous number that should infuriate us all. and make sure that we get on the phone, get on email, reach out to our legislators, reach out to our leaders, and make sure that we're pushing for protections for working people. We lost more than 1,000 loved ones in my district, many of them family, heads of family, heads of household that our children and family members depend on. And so we're in a very precarious position right now where we're trying to figure out how it is that we are going to rebuild our economy in a way that is inclusive and that really does support those who have been hardest hit by the virus.
For our viewers, Senator Ramos, are there any present programs, any bits of legislation or bills that are pending that might immediately help people in terms of avoiding eviction and helping to pay the rent?
Well, the governor put forth a program not too long ago. It's actually been 2 programs over the past few weeks in order to help folks with rent. But there are, of course, lots of red tape. It's very hard to apply and be approved for these programs. There are usually prerequisites. For example, if you were already having trouble paying rent before the pandemic. But we know that, if people had to stop working in March and haven't been able to return to work, well, they haven't had any income for the past 4 months. How is it that they're not able to qualify for any of these programs? That's not fair, which is why what we need to do, in my opinion, is cancel rent. In the same way that mortgages were frozen for many real estate owners and homeowners, we deserve a break too as renters. And I say we because I'm a renter as well. And of course, I haven't been out of work, thankfully, but that's a measure that would really help. And then the other thing that I've been advocating for very forcefully is for billionaires to pay their fair share in taxes, and in various different ways. Let me just say before I talk about my bill that I find it crazy that in New York, every time I go food shopping or if I buy new clothes for my boys, I have to pay sales tax. So why is it that a billionaire doesn't have to pay sales tax when they buy a new private plane or a yacht in New York? That's outrageous. It's absolutely infuriating. My bill, what it would do would put a tax, it's called the mark-to-market tax, would put a tax on billionaires' unrealized capital gains every year, meaning their increase in wealth every year that goes largely untaxed at the state and federal level. And I'll give as an example the fact that Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, just 2 days ago made a whopping $13 billion in one day. The tax that I'm proposing would generate just $5 billion from all of the billionaires, not one. And we have 118 of them in New York State, 5 more now today than before the pandemic. They're making a killing off of us. It's only fair that they pay a small modicum of their income in order to make sure that our people, the ones who work for them and make their profits possible so that we can put food on the table and we're able to make ends meet. It's only fair. Every time Wall Street crashes, we bail them out. Who gets to bail us out?
As a daughter of immigrants, and you understand the struggle of the immigrant household, and of course, as passionate as you are, how that the struggle has changed through families throughout COVID, and how do you feel that our community and the youth community can do, and what is it that they can do to get back on our feet, to get us back faster?
As the daughter of immigrants, I want to say that it is our responsibility to vote. The biggest responsibility the children of immigrants, those of us who are citizens, are able to do is to vote for our family members. Or if our family members can't vote, it's our responsibility to be their choice in electing our best leaders, in pushing for the best legislation. That's the best thing that we can do, is become serious advocates for our families and for our communities. Let our stories be known. Let it be known that immigrants are not disposable when it comes to dangerous work. And that we must be compensated, right? For example, wage theft is actually another way that I'm trying to get more money in the pockets of our immigrant neighbors, because the U.S. Department of Labor estimates that $1 billion in the state of New York gets stolen in wages every year. And this is happening right now with essential workers during the pandemic. So we're trying to find better measures and better ways for people to actually be paid for the work that they've actually done. And really, it's incumbent on us. I think that we need to learn from previous immigration waves. Sometimes there's generational amnesia, and we forget that actually, unless you're Native American, we are all descendants of immigrants. And it is our responsibility to continue that tradition and that education of talking to each other and keeping the hardships of those immigrants, those stories alive, so that hopefully someday we'll live in a world where they're never repeated again.
I like the term you used, immigrant amnesia. I'm an immigrant, and actually I was a victim of that, what you're explaining, many years ago. Well, not that many, but yeah, it happens, and it's extremely frustrating because there's no one you would turn to ask for help. At least as an immigrant, I have no idea who to turn to. Probably they are.
Well, if I may, for those of us watching at home, I do want to tell them that they are more than welcome to come to my office if they have experienced wage theft. We can help you file a claim with the State Department of Labor and with the NLRB if relevant, but we can help you start fighting for those wages and make sure that we're getting you on the record. I actually am looking to, I'm in Albany right now, waiting to debate in a few hours a bill precisely that would help with wage theft. It would help workers put a lien on employers' assets until the workers are paid every dime that they're owed. So hopefully that bill will pass both houses by the end of today, and hopefully the governor will sign it into law so that folks can get their just compensation as soon as possible, especially during this trying time.
And also that's for documented immigrants, correct?
It is absolutely not just for documented immigrants. This is for absolutely any and all workers in New York State. I want to be very clear that every worker in New York has rights, regardless of their immigration status. We can find ways in which we can help now, and if not, we can introduce bills to remedy whatever the problem is. But we have to start being aggressive about getting people our money. Lord knows our immigrants toil hard every day, putting their life on the line, doing dangerous work. It's only fair that they get a fair day's pay.
Great. That brings me to a question for Erick. Erick, so as someone who is undocumented and uninsured, what were the struggles that you faced since March this year?
And I was working in a restaurant almost 12 years here. And I stopped work March 18, and I haven't worked for all that days, And I feel it have a lot of, like few paper for help and unemployment something, but I never get nothing.
What about SNAP?
No, I only one time one lady came to my house and bring some like grocery, something like that. But only one time, and all of this time.
And why were you not able to apply for SNAP, for the food stamps?
I did apply, but I never get nothing. So,
You didn't hear anything?
No, I never hear nothing about that. Then I have to pay my rent, whatever the money I had, it's almost done, That's why I'm trying to move to Las Vegas. So, looking for something better there, or, at least, I can pay less rent and do something.
And you mentioned to me when we were speaking that you didn't go even to the food pantries. You didn't
I
like
didn't.
food. Why is that?
No, I didn't, because I have my girlfriend is pregnant and I was afraid to, get sick and make her sick too. That's why I stay home all the time.
Erick, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Common Point Queens, and we've been doing a lot to support community members during this time in providing emergency cash assistance, delivering food to people's homes. I would love for us to get connected after this show so that we could help you and make things a little bit easier as you're figuring out what your next steps are, because there's definitely things that we can do both in helping you to know what you're eligible for and what your rights are, as well as supporting the immediate needs that you have while staying home and not harming your girlfriend or your unborn child. So please, if you guys could connect us after, I'd love to be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Perhaps, Danielle, you could explain for us some of the many programs that your organization offers to help people like Erick and others.
Sure, and I'm sorry that I jumped in there, but I just couldn't keep hearing him talk and be like, I can help and not say something. So I am the Chief Executive Officer of Common Point Queens, a agency that's dedicated and committing to helping to meet the needs of community. And what's really beautiful about a broad mission is that it's evolving. And so we know that in March, a lot of the needs of community changed. And so prior to the pandemic, we're actually about to launch a resource hub in Elmhurst, Corona, which is meant to provide job training, financial assistance, legal assistance, food emergency assistance, benefits and work supports, as well as vocational credential training to really help people move from crisis to stability. So this has been the space that we've operated in, and obviously in March, things really changed. And I feel like in Queens, we became almost like a disaster relief agency because all of a sudden there was like Councilmember Dromm noted, there was this immediate crisis, and Elmhurst Hospital was almost like was the epicenter of where this was all happening. And we immediately internally pivoted and said, well, what can we do? And we knew immediately that one of the needs would be for our undocumented community members to access unemployment and access cash quickly, and that there was an incredible amount of red tape. And we were really fortunate to be partners with UJA Federation to be able to pivot to private donors. And we secured about $400,000 of emergency cash assistance so that we could immediately put real cash into people's pockets as quickly as possible. We connected with hospitals. We happen to be privileged enough to have a board member who is a funeral chapel owner who helped us to learn how to help people get, as awful as this sounds, bodies out of hospitals and support people to pay for funerals. And the unbelievable need of food was overwhelming. And like Senator Ramos noted, we became a food distribution. We already had a pantry, but to just contextualize, we used to give about 500 packages out a month. We now give out, 1,500 a week, and moving from about 2,000 to about 15,000 community members that were in need of food, socially distanced, lines around the corner. There was something so incredibly heartbreaking about it because the need for food and the need for things were so immediate, and so many people, Erick hasn't worked since March. How many of us are one paycheck away from an emergency? Imagine what it feels like when you're sitting for 16, 20 weeks not working. And as the CEO of this agency, what I would say to you is my biggest fear is that people think this is done. And we have only started to deal with the aftermath of what our community is going through and what we will need to help people repair, rebuild, and stay in their homes and get employment again. Because not only are our community members hurting, our businesses are hurting, our not-for-profits are hurting, the whole ecosystem of Queens is hurting. And if, I think what was really amazing as somebody who has the ability to see how people responded as community members, whether it was $1 or $22, sent in donations, came in to volunteer to help us get food into homes like Erick so he wouldn't have to leave his house. But all of that's kind of, we can all stay in crisis mode for just a certain amount of time. We start to forget that we have all these things going on. And so my concern as the city goes off pause is that we don't forget that Erick is still not working and Erick still needs support and services, and that Erick is really just one of tens of thousands of Queens residents that need us all to lean in, band together, and come up with real solutions like the ones that Senator Ramos is proposing in some of her legislation.
I had a question in regards to how do you prioritize and determine what the community needs, and how are you able to offer what they need, and since it's a wide community, wide range?
Yeah, I want to say like on a wing and a prayer a little bit, right? Like I think that everything that we knew about the world really changed in March. And so lots of those things changed as well. I think we knew as a large not-for-profit in Queens who does a lot with young people and childcare and preschools, that one of the ways that we could be supportive was being a part of kind of the ecosystem of essential workers. So we immediately started to provide emergency childcare in 7 different locations. In partnership with New York City, it was free. People could drop their children off, and we learned really quickly how to be experts. I'm going to air quote experts and knock on lots of body parts in serving our children safely with social distancing, to create a scenario where parents could go to the hospitals and to work and not worry that their children were not being adequately taken care of, and support their children in remote learning. So I think I give that example because part of it is kind of figuring out, well, what are our specialties and what are the needs of communities and what can we do that makes sense? So for instance, when we open the hub and we offer legal services, we won't directly provide those legal services. We've brought NILAG in, New York Legal Assistance Group, to have an office within our hub so that they can be the experts in providing the legal assistance. So I think the only way not-for-profits in Queens will rebuild is if we think about how we are strategic in our partnerships, that we put our egos in our pockets and we learn how to create synergistic relationships with one another, because the resources are scarce. I'm sure Councilmember Dromm can reflect on the traumatic budget process that the city just went through. And in order for us to use our resources appropriately, we're gonna have to really think about what I'm great at and how I can help the problems, and what my colleagues and other not-for-profits are great at, and how we create meaningful pipelines of helping our clients and not make their lives difficult at a time when anxiety is high and their needs are immediate.
It's budget time. Where do you think you would wish to have more funds invested?
Oh my, I'm going to go ahead and speak for Danny. I think he and I are on the same page. He as an educator and me as a public school mom. Please, can we fully fund our schools? Can teachers stop having to dip into their own pockets in order to have what's necessary in the classroom? I mean, I often wonder if Danny Dromm still keeps his receipts. I would love to know. I mean, it's so crazy that, for example, when I get a school supply list in September, I have to bring a certain number of toilet paper rolls and paper towels for the class. I mean, we certainly pay enough in taxes as working class people. Again, I just think everybody should be able to pay their fair share so that nobody is living and learning under these conditions. That's one. And then the other one, of course, well, I'm the prime co-sponsor of the New York Health Act in the State Senate. I'm a big believer in healthcare and quality healthcare for all, guaranteed. And I think that those are the two biggest indicators of a viable means to have a better quality of life as we're seeing people grow up and become good citizens, right? On that note, I'm actually going to take advantage of this moment to thank you guys for having me. I was actually just called into Senate chamber to go debate my sweat bill, what I was talking about, workers being able to put a lien on employers' assets so they can get their money. So wish me luck. I'm off to debate with the Republicans. Thank you so much for having me. It's really important that we're having these conversations so that more Queens residents know what we're going through and where we need them to step up and help us fight for more resources and more services for our people. We deserve it. Thank you.
I would agree with Jessica, and teachers have been shortchanged again. Because Mayor de Blasio cut the Teacher's Choice program from the budget. It was a $20 million program to give each teacher in the New York City public school system a reimbursement of $250 for supplies that they bought for their classroom. And unfortunately, due to the budget circumstances that we found ourselves under, the mayor eliminated that program. So, if for no other reason than to tell our teachers we support you, I would love to have seen that money be put into the budget, but it's not there this year. But in addition to that, I think that the other areas that I would like to see more funding are immigrant defense funds and immigrant legal funds to fight back against the discrimination, against deportation, to make sure that they are getting what is due them by the city government, whether they be documented or undocumented. That's one area that I think we still need to really work on. And then the other area, although the council did hold harmless money for food programs in the city, there's such a great need, as Danielle said, for food. I walk out of my apartment building every day and I go down by PS 69 and there's a line 2 blocks long for people waiting for the grab and go food at the public school. I've seen lines 20 blocks long in my neighborhood for people getting food from a food pantry at the Catholic Church, Blessed Sacrament Catholic Church in the neighborhood. So food, I think, remains one of the biggest needs in the community. And imagine, I mean, food is a human right. Everybody has a right to food. But many people, and by the way, I know Erick, and I'm friends with a friend of Erick's. And Erick is a hard worker, and he worked in the restaurant business. And the restaurant businesses are suffering tremendously because they can't do indoor dining. And so until those restaurants open up again, Erick may not be able to work again. And people like me also, I love going to restaurants. I would love to be able to go to one, but it's not possible. So food remains a big problem in communities like mine. Food insecurity is an issue.